No Rules Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention by Reed Hastings and Erin Meyer. Picture this. It's the year 2000, and you're walking into this massive office tower in Dallas, Texas. Your palms are sweating, your heart's racing. You and your business partner run this tiny startup that mails DVDs to people. You've got 100 employees, you're bleeding money, and you're about to pitch to the king of home entertainment, Blockbuster. These guys are worth $6 billion. They've got nearly 9,000 stores worldwide. As you step into that meeting room, you lean over and whisper to your partner, Blockbuster is 1,000 times our size. Their CEO, looking sharp in his expensive suit, listens politely to your pitch. You're offering to sell Netflix for $50 million. You'll run their online operation. You'll be their ticket to the future. And then he just says no. Walking out, you can practically feel the laughter of 60,000 Blockbuster employees. I mean, why would they ever need you? They had everything. The brand, the cash, the customers, the whole game. Jump ahead 10 years. Blockbuster's bankrupt. Another decade passes. Netflix isn't just streaming to 167 million subscribers in 190 countries. They're making Oscar-winning films and working with the biggest names in entertainment. So what the heck happened? How did the underdog not just win, but completely dominate? That's what we're diving into today with No Rules Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. Reed Hastings, Netflix's co-founder and CEO, teamed up with INSEAD professor Erin Meyer to write this. And let me tell you, it's not your typical business book. It's basically the instruction manual for a completely radical way of thinking about work, talent, and freedom. You've probably heard whispers about the legendary Netflix Culture Deck, that 127-slide presentation that Sheryl Sandberg called the most important document ever to come out of Silicon Valley. It was brutally honest. It said things like, adequate performance gets a generous severance package. It introduced this keeper test, where managers ask themselves, if this person told me they were quitting, would I fight to keep them? If the answer is no, you should let them go now. To a lot of people, this sounded terrifying, like a workplace designed to crush your soul. And yet, you can't argue with the results. Netflix didn't just survive one industry shift. They've reinvented themselves 4 times in 15 years. From DVDs to streaming, from licensing shows to creating them, from a U.S. company to a global entertainment giant. Most companies can't even pull off one of those transformations. Today, we're going behind the scenes of the Netflix playbook. We're uncovering the 3 core principles that let them build this culture of freedom and responsibility. By the time we're done, you won't just understand how Netflix works. You'll have a totally new lens for thinking about what makes a truly great team. Whether that's a global company, a small project, or even just how you approach your own career. This is the story of how breaking all the rules led to rewriting them for everyone else. The Netflix culture story doesn't start with some brilliant master plan. It starts with a crisis. Spring 2001. The dot-com bubble bursts. Startups are imploding left and right. Money's drying up, and Netflix, still far from profitable, is in serious trouble. Reed Hastings and his team face a brutal choice. Lay off 1/3 of their workforce, 40 out of 120 people. Now, they didn't have any obvious dead weight. So they divided everyone into 2 groups, the 80 absolute rock stars they'd keep and 40 good people they'd have to let go. It was agonizing. These weren't just co-workers. They were friends. The day of the layoffs was as awful as you'd imagine. Tears, slammed doors, raw emotion everywhere. Reed braced himself for the fallout from the remaining staff. He expected anger, plummeting morale, maybe even more people quitting. But then something weird happened. After a few weeks, the office atmosphere didn't just stabilize, it actually got electric. The place was buzzing with energy and ideas. And here's the really crazy part. With 30% fewer people, they were getting more done. The remaining 80 were working longer hours, but they were happier than they'd ever been. One person described it as being in love with your work. This was Reed's light bulb moment. It completely transformed how he thought about great workplaces. He realized that a great workplace isn't about the perks, not the fancy gym, not the free sushi. A great workplace is about one thing: stunning colleagues. This became the foundation of everything at Netflix. Reed called it talent density. Think about it this way. If you've got 5 incredible performers and 2 who are just meh, those mediocre ones don't just do mediocre work, they drag down the whole team. They suck up the manager's time, they lower the quality of conversations, they force the stars to work around them. Eventually, your best people get frustrated and leave, because talented people want to be around other talented people. Performance, both good and bad, spreads like wildfire. The 2001 layoffs had accidentally created this environment with incredibly high talent density. And in that environment, everyone was learning faster, achieving more, feeling more energized. They were pushing each other to new heights. From that moment on, Reed made a commitment. Netflix's #1 goal would be maintaining this incredible talent density. They'd hire only the absolute best, and they'd have the courage to let go of anyone who wasn't a star performer, even if they were nice and worked hard. This is where the whole "we're a family company" metaphor falls apart. In a family, you stick together no matter what. You support your slightly lazy cousin unconditionally. But Netflix decided they weren't a family. They were a professional sports team. On a pro sports team, you're trying to win championships. Sure, players have deep bonds and support each other, but everyone knows the coach's job is putting the best player in every position. You don't keep someone on the roster just because they show up and try hard. You keep them because they're the best at what they do. Effort isn't enough. Performance is everything. This mindset, "we are a team, not a family," became central to Netflix's DNA. Now, building a team of brilliant people is great, but it raises a tricky question. How do you get a group of super talented people to work together effectively, to challenge each other and grow, without egos and politics destroying everything? Reed found the answer in an unexpected place: his marriage. Early in his career, both at his first company and at home, Reed avoided conflict like the plague. He hated upsetting people, so he'd dance around problems instead of addressing them head-on. His marriage was struggling. He and his wife were drifting apart, and he had no idea how to fix it. So they started seeing a marriage counselor. That counselor got them to do something radical: actually talk openly and honestly about their feelings and frustrations. For Reed, it was transformative. He realized he'd been saying family is the most important thing to me, while his actions told a completely different story. This transparent feedback, as uncomfortable as it was, saved their marriage. He decided to bring that same commitment to honesty into the office. He started encouraging everyone at Netflix to say exactly what they really thought, with one crucial rule: it had to come from a place of positive intent. The goal wasn't to attack or wound someone. It was to get feedback out in the open where it could actually help. This became the second pillar: increase candor. They created a simple but powerful rule: only say about someone what you will say to their face. If someone came to Reed complaining about a colleague, he'd ask, "What did they say when you talked to them directly about this?" This is incredibly hard to do. We're all trained to be polite, avoid confrontation, whisper behind people's backs. But at Netflix, not speaking up when you have helpful feedback is seen as disloyal to the company. You have a chance to help the business and your colleague get better, and you're choosing not to take it. To make this work, they developed a simple framework called the 4 A's. When giving feedback. 1. Aim to assist. Your feedback must come from a genuine desire to help. You're not venting frustration. You're trying to help the person or company succeed. 2. Actionable. Be specific about what the person can do differently. Your presentation was confusing, is useless. If you started with your main point, your presentation would be way more powerful, is actionable feedback. When receiving feedback. 3. Appreciate. Fight the urge to get defensive. Your job is to listen with an open mind and show gratitude for the input, even if it stings. 4. Accept or discard. You have to listen to all feedback, but you don't have to follow it. The decision to act on it is entirely yours. Once you've got these 2 pillars in place, high talent density and radical candor, something amazing becomes possible. You can start removing controls. This is the no rules part of no rules rules. At his first company, Pure Software, Reed made a classic mistake. As the company grew, a few employees did dumb things. One salesperson stayed at a 5-star hotel that cost $700 a night. Frustrated, Reed created a travel policy with strict spending limits. Another time, an employee's dog chewed a hole in the conference room rug. So Reed created a no dogs at work policy. Every time something went wrong, a new process was born to prevent it from happening again. The company became more efficient, but it also became less creative. The Mavericks left. The people who were good at following rules stayed. When the market shifted, the company couldn't adapt, and Reed ended up selling it. He promised himself he wouldn't make the same mistake at Netflix. He realized that most rules in big companies aren't there for top performers. They're there to manage the few employees who act sloppy or irresponsibly. But what if you don't have those people? What if your entire company is made up of stunning colleagues you completely trust? If you have high talent density, you don't need the rules. The more talent you have, the more freedom you can give. So Netflix started a radical experiment. They began ripping pages out of the employee handbook. The first casualty? The vacation policy. In 2003, an employee pointed out something interesting. "We don't track the hours people work per day or week," he said. "We work some weekends. We answer emails at night. Why are we tracking vacation days per year?" Brilliant question. So Netflix eliminated its vacation policy entirely. No more allotment of days, no tracking, no approvals. The new policy was simply, take vacation. You decide when you need a break, a day, a week, a month. Now Reed had 2 nightmares about this. In the first, he'd rush into the office during a crucial period to find it completely empty because everyone was on vacation. In the second, he'd find the office packed with exhausted zombies who hadn't taken time off in years because they were too scared to. To make it work, they learned 2 things were critical. First, leaders must model taking real vacations. If the boss only takes 2 weeks off, everyone else will feel pressured to do the same, regardless of what the policy says. Reed now takes about 6 weeks of vacation annually and talks about it openly, signaling to everyone that it's not just allowed, it's encouraged. Second, managers have to lead with context, not control. Instead of having a rule, you have a conversation. An accounting manager, for example, would explain to her team that taking vacation in early January, when they're closing the books, isn't in the company's best interest. You trust people to do the right thing, but you give them the context to understand what that right thing is. The next policy to vanish? Travel and expenses. Instead of a thick handbook detailing what you could and couldn't spend, Netflix replaced it with 5 words. Act in Netflix's best interest. That's it. No approval process. No spending limits. If you're flying overnight from LA to New York for a major presentation the next morning, it's probably in Netflix's best interest for you to fly business class so you arrive rested. If you're taking a short flight to Mexico City with the whole team, it probably isn't. This doesn't mean it's a free-for-all. There are checks on the back end. Managers review their team's expenses, and finance audits a percentage annually. And the rule is crystal clear. If you abuse the freedom, you're fired. Not with a warning. Immediately and publicly, so everyone understands the consequences of irresponsibility. What's fascinating is that this freedom often leads to people being more frugal. With a strict policy, some people spend right up to the limit because the rules allow it. Without a rule, they feel more personal responsibility and often spend less. This idea that freedom fosters responsibility is the engine driving the entire culture. But if you want this to work, you have to be willing to pay for it. And that leads to another radical Netflix idea: compensation. To maintain high talent density, Netflix decided to pay more than anyone else. They operate on what engineers call the rockstar principle. A study in 1968 found that the best software programmers weren't just 2 or 3 times better than average. They were up to 25 times faster at debugging and 10 times faster at execution. One truly great engineer is worth more than a dozen average ones. Reed believes this applies to almost any creative role, not just programming. The best marketing expert can create a campaign that attracts millions more customers. The best content executive has an instinct for hit shows that's thousands of times more valuable than someone who doesn't. So Netflix decided that for all creative roles, they'd pay top of personal market. Instead of hiring 10 average people, they'd hire 1 rock star and pay them more than any other company would. This also meant eliminating performance bonuses. Most companies offer a salary plus a bonus tied to hitting certain goals. But Netflix realized that in a fast-changing industry, a goal set in January might be irrelevant by June. Tying people to outdated goals kills flexibility. Plus, research shows that for creative work, contingent pay, like bonuses, can actually decrease performance. It narrows your focus and pulls you out of the open, creative headspace where great ideas live. So Netflix just puts all that money into salary. They offer a higher base than competitors who rely on bonuses, which makes them incredibly attractive to top talent. But how do you know what top of market is for each employee, year after year? This is where it gets really unconventional. Netflix encourages its employees to take calls from recruiters at other companies. They even encourage them to go on interviews. The rule is, do it openly and share what you learn. It's your responsibility to know your worth, and it's the company's responsibility to pay you that much, or more, to keep you. This transforms the secretive, adversarial salary negotiation into an open, honest conversation. It ensures Netflix is always paying proactively to keep its best people. It's way more expensive to lose a star employee and recruit a replacement than to pay them a bit more upfront. So now we've got a company full of highly paid, incredibly talented people who give each other constant, candid feedback and who are free from most corporate constraints. This brings us to the final, most powerful piece of the puzzle. With all these elements in place, you can eliminate the biggest control of all: decision-making approvals. At most companies, the boss's job is to approve or block employees' decisions. The bigger the decision, the higher up the pyramid it goes for approval. This model is safe, but it's also painfully slow and kills innovation. Netflix works on a completely different principle, summed up in another mantra: don't seek to please your boss, seek to do what's best for the company. This means any employee at any level can make big decisions, even multi-million-dollar ones, without getting approval from their manager. The person making the decision is called the informed captain. Their job isn't to get consensus or approval. Their job is to gather input, listen to all perspectives, and then make the call. They own the decision, and they own the outcome. To make this work, they use a process called the innovation cycle. It has 4 steps. First, you farm for dissent, or socialize your idea. You actively seek out disagreement. You don't just look for cheerleaders. You find the smartest people who will challenge your idea and poke holes in it. You create a shared document and invite dozens of colleagues to leave comments and debate. This isn't about getting permission. It's about stress testing your thinking. Second, for a really big idea, you test it out. A perfect example is when Netflix was considering offering downloads for offline viewing. Both Reed and the chief product officer were publicly against it. They believed streaming would become so ubiquitous that downloading would be pointless. But a junior researcher on the team had doubts. So he ran tests in Germany and India and found that in markets with less reliable internet, a huge percentage of users relied on downloads. The data was so compelling, it completely changed top leadership's minds, and Netflix now offers downloads worldwide. That researcher was empowered to test an idea the CEO himself had dismissed. Third, as the informed captain, you make your bet. You've gathered input, you've seen the data, now it's your call. And to reinforce this ownership, at Netflix, the informed captain signs the contract. Even if it's a $100 million deal, it's a powerful symbol that the responsibility rests with you, not with some vice president 3 levels up. Finally, if your bet succeeds, you celebrate. But if it fails, you sunshine it. This is critical. You don't hide your failures. You talk about them openly, publicly, and frequently. You write a memo explaining what went wrong, and, most importantly, what you learned. This does 2 things. It lets the entire organization learn from your mistake, and it signals to everyone else that it's safe to take big risks. If people are punished for failed bets, they'll stop taking them, and innovation dies. This whole system, talent density, candor, and freedom, creates a virtuous cycle. A culture of freedom and responsibility attracts more top talent, which allows you to grant even more freedom, which leads to faster innovation. The ultimate test for this radical culture came when Netflix expanded globally into 130 countries in a single day. Would this very American, very direct culture work in places like Japan, Brazil, or the Netherlands? They quickly learned that while the desire for freedom is universal, expressing things like candor definitely isn't. In Japan, where harmony is prized, giving direct, critical feedback to your boss is almost unthinkable. In the Netherlands, feedback is so direct that American colleagues can find it harsh. Netflix learned they couldn't just export their culture wholesale, they had to adapt. This became the 5th A of their feedback model. In less direct cultures like Japan, they relied more on formal, structured feedback moments, like their live 360-degree feedback dinners, because spontaneous, informal feedback was less likely to happen. In more direct cultures, they coached American employees to understand that blunt feedback wasn't an attack, it was just feedback. The lesson was to talk about cultural differences, to be curious, be humble, and learn before you teach. At its core, the Netflix culture is a choice between two different ways of managing people. You can operate like a symphony orchestra, where every musician has a precise score and follows the conductor perfectly. It's about minimizing variation and executing with flawless precision. This is the world of rules and process. Or you can operate like a jazz band. The musicians know the song's overall structure, but they have freedom to improvise, to riff off each other, to create something new and beautiful in the moment. This is the world of freedom and responsibility. For companies where the biggest risk is making a mistake, like in an emergency room or an airplane factory, the symphony orchestra is the right model. But for creative companies, where the biggest risk is failing to innovate and becoming irrelevant, you need to build a jazz band. You need to create conditions for improvisation and trust your stunningly talented musicians to make beautiful music together. So what can we take away from this incredible story? When you strip away all the layers of the Netflix culture, you're left with a profound and somewhat challenging idea about trust. Most organizations are built on a foundation of control because, deep down, they don't fully trust their employees. They trust them enough to do a job, but not enough to take a vacation without tracking it, or spend company money without approval, or make a big decision without a sign-off. What Reed Hastings did was flip that assumption completely. He decided to build a company founded on the opposite principle, that if you hire truly exceptional people, the most rational and effective thing you can do is trust them completely. This isn't blind faith, it's a system. You build the conditions for trust, high talent density, and extreme candor, and then you get out of the way. The phrase that really sticks with me is, lead with context, not control. It's such a simple idea, but incredibly difficult to practice. As a leader, it's so much easier to just say yes or no, to give an order, to create a rule. It gives you the illusion of being in charge. Leading with context requires more work up front. It requires you to be so clear in your own thinking that you can articulate the why behind every goal so powerfully that your team can figure out the how on their own. It means your job isn't to be the chess master moving all the pieces. It's to be the gardener creating perfect soil so amazing things can grow. For any of us, whether you're leading a company or just navigating your own life, there are a few simple but powerful actions we can take from this book right now. First, take a hard look at the teams you're part of. Ask yourself, are we operating like a family, where we protect everyone regardless of performance, or like a professional sports team, committed to having the best person in every position? That simple shift in metaphor can change everything about the standards you set for yourself and others. Second, practice the 4 A's of feedback in a low-stakes situation this week. Find a moment to give someone actionable feedback with genuine intent to help them. And just as importantly, find someone you trust and ask them the keeper test question. If I were thinking of leaving, how hard would you fight to keep me? The answer might be scary, but it'll also be the most valuable information you get all year. And finally, the next time someone on your team makes a mistake, try this. Instead of reacting with frustration or blame, ask yourself the question Reed forces himself to ask. What context did I fail to set? That single question shifts focus from blaming people to improving the system. It's the ultimate act of leadership, and it's at the very heart of building a culture of freedom and responsibility. That was a summary of No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings and Erin Meyer. We've covered the core pillars of their philosophy today, but honestly, a summary is just a map of the territory. The real adventure begins when you explore the landscape yourself. This book is packed with dozens of stories, examples, and moments of reflection we just couldn't fit into our time together. If any of these ideas about talent, freedom, or radical honesty have sparked something in you, I really encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new management theory. It's about fundamentally challenging your own assumptions about trust and control, and what it truly takes to build something great. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another transformative book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.